Hoino, ka tira tātou. Katoa, tēnā hoki koutou te tēpū whakahaere. Ia tātou, ka nui te hari, ka nui te tino koa. Thank you for that introduction. It sounds bigger than it is. But however, tēnā rā tātou katoa. He tino honore hoki tēnei, te tū i mui a koutou, i tērā ahiahi, i muri hoki i ngā tino rangatira, i ngā tino rangatira kua tūwhera tia i wēnei kaupapa e kōrero hia nei a tātou. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā hoki tātou katoa. E tika ana e tika ana hoki. Can you hear some feedback? E tika ana hoki ngā mihi ki oku tupuranga. Engari, e hea nau kia pēnei ake, i roto hoki i ngā neke tanga o ngā tūpuna, e tika ana kia whai whakaro mō rātou. Nā, i roto i tērā kowai, i raro hoki i te maunga o hikurangi, ko Ngāti Porou tērā, tika ana te mihi. E tūnoa hoki o tērā, ko ngā reke tanga o oku tini tūpuna, e tū mai ana Waikato tai nui. Nō reira, e tika ana hau, ki te ingoa tia i wēnei iwi, i mua iau, nā rātou hoki, i parahia te whenua, mō wai, mō tātou, kia kite ai mātou ngā whakaritenga kei waho atu i te taitokerau. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā hoki tātou katoa. So, I want to just, we had that photo up earlier, and it was, when I got the call up, I was pretty excited. I was very excited, in fact, because I'm still nestling and bathing in that lovely awa, having my new mokopuna and my new mokopuna mahanga. And so the girls were born in early June, and I said to Ngā Ropi, oh, why not? Just put my babies out there. And so there they are, Te Huia, and the other one, so my Tāne's partner at the time was Italian, and so they wanted Jailo. So Jailo, rao ko Te Huia. And so there they are. So I just want to start my kōrero about Hera Rere. If we can take it back to the... Oh, go up some more, bro. We've been there. Thank you. I was trying to think about how I was going to do this, and I was watching everybody. They do some pretty amazing ways of presenting, and when you're not that amazing at technology, you got to look for other amazing things and people, and so Kiterangi was one of those. So I wanted to start off my title really, Hera Rere Whitianga Te Rā, it always really connects me to my Waikato maniapoto tūpuna hone kingi. Because over the years growing up, I grew up listening to the birth, to the before my birth stories. So e whakareri ana rātou. E whakareri ana rātou mō tēnei mea te whānautanga o te pēpi. So I thought to myself, well, I want to learn a bit more about the story. And so the reason whakareri mō te whānautanga o tēnei pōtiki, and I'll arrive there shortly. My kranima suggested to my parents, who were near 50, mother, and 61-year-old dad, got no business having tamariki at 50 and 61. However, after producing 11 tamariki, none of them hold names from our Waikato maniapoto whakapapa. So there it is. E kōpu tonu ana, ka timata ai ngā whakaritenga. Rituals and Clarke and safe passage has begun for this baby. Ngā mahi tuku iho. So child number 12 has arrived. After 11 practices, finally they got somewhere near perfection. That's my assessment. So my tūpuna would talk about ngā pakanga, and this was it for me, I suppose. I was told at that same young age, I think I was about 6 or 7, that my name was a deliberate action to maintain our whānau whakapapa to Waikato Tainui, Waikato Maniapoto. The story kind of went something like this. My tūpuna who lived in Waiheke Island, anybody know that big, huge metropolis of Waiheke Island? It's got all these touristy looking homes. So my tūpuna stayed out there by Tiatia, alongside a beautiful, secluded beach area or bay, and it's got these beautiful little, they're little if you're from Hikurangi and you're, taupiri, they're really little. Hey Joe knows. And so surrounded, I'm going to make them sound grand by calling them rolling hills of metropolis. And these calm waters along Churches Bay. My tūpuna would talk about the pakanga, the war stories, and the invasion of other iwi, particularly Ngāpuhi, to occupy Waiheke. He recalls in the dark of the night, he and other reinforcements struggled up that hill at Churches Bay. And he remembered carrying half a water bottle, open flesh wounds, and a promise to stay alive. As he reached the hilltop in the early morning and break of day, the sun had risen and he had kept his promise to stay alive. And for yet another day, but with that, Hera, Rere, whitianga te rā. And I thought, and growing up, I used to think, oh man, that's just too long. It's, I went to a native school in Kairohe, and many believe you go to a native school, it must be a kura kaupapa type school, and hell no. You only spoke English, and you just knew what's going to happen if you're going to rock up and your name is Hera, Rere, whitianga te rā. And so my parents sought to shorten my name to help stop the mangralizing, really, of my name. And so there I was, te reo speaking mokopuna, from the day that Nanny gave you kōrari to eat. And so te reo speaking, and I'm always getting better at this te reo Pākehā. I'm getting better all the time. And so it was with that they shortened my name. So that's short version, really. Yet it's a very short version, but it's the underlining messages that talk about the importance and the significance of whakapapa. Talks about the maintenance of iwi hapu whānau lines, pūrākau of tūpuna with lived experience, ko wai ahau, no hea ahau, he mokopuna ahau, no mea. Kia u ki te kaupapa aha koa te aha. That's a hard one sometimes. And he rā anō a pōpō. Whakapono and tikanga, good mates, supposed to be. And te kaha o te wairua. So, ko wai ahau no hea, we know what that is. We know, being who we are. You listen to my little story about my tūpuna from Waiheke Island and the readiness that took place just because this near perfection, number 12, was about to arrive. And so the journey, the journey took its shape. So I guess inside of what we learned, you know, the hera anoa pōpō, the whakapono, the tikanga, all of those become part of your, I want to say it's part of that, what is it, that thingy when you parachute. It's kind of part of my parachute when you got to jump out that aeroplane and make sure you got all your things covered. And that list that I just share with you as part of my putting my parachute together, because sometimes, hell yes, it feels like that. The mahi and the magnitude of the work absolutely feels like that. So it's with that in mind, I want to just introduce you to Te Kawa o Te Marae. Te Kawa o Te Marae is the model of practice that we just made up because it was necessary, it was important, that particularly my interest is working with tamariki Māori, with tamariki e mauana i te reo rangatira. That's been my priority. And everybody else who does all those jammy work, go for it. You know, I think that's your jam, then go for it. My particular interest was about mohopona and te reo. And I just want to make a few acknowledgements to my whanaunga down there, Moana, Dr. Moana Eruera. We used to have this joke when we worked together, because there's her and I in Leland, and I talk about the two doctors and the nurse. You know, there needs to be somebody who's picking up after the doctors. But I just want to acknowledge their work in Te Toka Tūmona, which has been the work along Takepu, that the two of them pulled together in a pathway that was supposed to be, I suppose, life-giving for a lot of the work we were doing, but often didn't get past the light of day. And that's that systemic environment that we all worked in. But I want to acknowledge it because I know that their kaupapa that have been wānanga over and over and over. And so with that, I introduce ngā toka tūmona. These are principles that I've put together over the years that worked for me, working alongside tamariki and mokopuna. And so we decided that this is how it's going to be. You're now in a session, all right? We're now in a session with you all, everybody. And just to say, and just to think down a bit, please, bro. And just to say that some of the history of this really came through by our work, myself and Ngaropi Cameron from Tūtama Wahine. The two of us became, we volunteered. We volunteered to be part of the evaluation for Leone, Kuni, another Dr. Leone, another Dr. Kuni, another Dr. Fiona Cram. Then we must have been the nurses. We've got a long nursing background. Oh, you are. So, and so I acknowledge that because it was a lot of the work that we did then. Back in the late 90s, we were approved service providers, approved, heka, for doing things that we know work. Anyhow, what we knew that we're working wasn't getting paid for. So we moved ourselves into being the providers of choice. And I was, our organisation, Te Whare Ruruhau at the time, was approved to deliver on tāne programs, wahine and tamariki. We were all those other approvals around Ministry of Education, Child, Youth and Family. We ran rangatahi jam, school holiday programs, and all of those busy things. And I wanted to mention that rangatahi jam, holiday program because it's pinnacle to the work of Te Kawa o Te Marae. And maybe that's probably a better place. I can go off script now, I think. I can go into the whare and talk about the intention and just how this worked for us at our time. Remember, I was adamant that it was about tamariki te reo speakers. Why? For, like many of us, that was us. That was us in the playground, in the classrooms, who remained voiceless because we couldn't say that somebody had given us a hiding or somebody had stolen something or, did us unjust, really, in the classrooms. And so part of living that out, and it was a bit like I resonated with some of the things that Graham said earlier about the mind shift. It fueled the mind. It fueled the mind to do something about it. And surely not on my watch I'm going to stand back and listen to a mokopuna not being heard simply because their reo is not understood. And so we came to this place here of my three of us in our team came up with this idea. I talked about let's provide a nice natural platform for tamariki with service providers in South Auckland, where it was a bit of a metropolis really for kura and a lot of the kohanga reo, they were ramping up, and we weren't that far away from Whani Waititi, when JT let us in, when we could go out those ways. So we had these babies who would come in with whatever their kaupapa was. And one that really comes to mind for me that was the most instrumental and the heart, ngākau ātawhai for tamariki, and who came forward to us because there was this referral we got from Child Youth and Family at the time to say that these tamariki at Kura Kaupapa, we've gone in to interview them and they were non-participatory, they were withdrawn and they had attitude. And so that was the description of these tamariki after they had been interviewed at the Kura Kaupapa. And so being an approved provider, we were sourced. And in doing so, reading those documents and it was, so my question to my colleagues at the social work team is that, so who interviewed them? So we won't say who interviewed them, but suffice to say they weren't Māori nor were they te reo speakers. And so the mokopuna comes in and of course is going to do what we would do. Noho wahangu. Hey. And so we got ourselves ready, like the getting ready for the birth of that near perfection. We got ourselves ready. We got ourselves ready for these mokopuna, 5 of them. And so their background story, and this, we've gone on to do lots of other great work, but I always come back to this one because it was responsible for us developing and working through te kawa. And so the 5 of them, and their backstory was Christmas Eve, Mum and Dad had gone off to look for Santa, had gone out to look for Santa, and these 5 tamariki were left by themselves at home, the eldest being 10 and the youngest being 4 years old. And so the 10-year-old, used to it, down pat, do the kai, get it all ready, bath the babies, watch some TV, we're falling off to sleep, that's sleep time. And so off they go to sleep. So early hours of the morning, there's no movement from the baby. And so the baby passes. And so as a result, the following morning, when parents, shame, couldn't find Santa, he was nowhere to be seen, but brought home hangover. And so here these babies are on their own, and so the 10-year-old tells the mother that we can't wake baby, etc. And so you can imagine the dynamics that are going on for these mokopuna. You know, remember, they're withdrawn, they're non-participatory. Yep, and they're in the corner. And so these mokopuna are presenting, that's their backstory. So as we whakareri for this mokopuna to come in and see us, and the mother comes with them as well, because the social worker, they decided that this would be a good opportunity for the mother to participate as well. So mum and the tamariki and the social worker who brought them in come into the office, and the mother has them at the door and says, "Go, get in there, da-da-da." And so the tamariki come in on their own. Well, we've readied ourselves, just the two of us, and our other one was making the kai for the end of our session. And so our first thing when the tamariki came in, you could see that they were what we expected. They were mataku. They were looking around in my office/counselling room, and they were looking at the pictures, etc. And the first thing I said to the mokopuna is, "No mai, mokopuna, no mai." And they looked at me, and they says, "He reo kōrero," you know, just like that. I said, "Ai, kei a koe te reo?" "Ai, pai mutunga." So that was just our first break, you know, that was like the toe that was in the water. And then the response became a lot more resounding. So I says, "Oh, kei a koutou he tahi Clarke tīmata ai? O ai, kei a hau whaia, kei a hau." Now I'm going, withdrawn knots, non-cooperative knots, you know. And so that started our journey, really. So ka kōrero e ngā wā katoa I roto I tau mātou reo rangatira. Ka ki mai atu te tamaitira e waruona tau, whaia, te mea ko Clarke ki tā, kei a wai te mihi, ko hau anake te tamaiti, ka kata, you know, ka puta mai te kata. On account that I'm not the only male here and I've just done the Clarke, am I expected to do the mihi too? And it just reinforced, and my kaimahi who was with me, who's not a reo speaker but can understand, she just couldn't get over. I could tell, I could see her and he kuia noki. And so I said to him, "Wā te ana koe?" And he says to me, "Oh, meina kei a koe, tōkua nātu." You know, it was like, "You got it? Well, let's see you. Let's go." And so I said, "Oh, ai māku e tīmata, ai tō mātou, mihi." And so it was right there, really. It was right there, that little interaction showed me that he's used to a process. And he was giving it to me, really. The opening was an opportunity for him to exercise and flex. And even in their mamaitanga, you know, and I kapai. So I quickly sketched on a whiteboard, and I just wrote down, so, ko Clarke, ko mihi, ko hea te kaupapa o te rā. And so we were making this up on the hop, and we were going through the marae, you know, the pōhiri. and kaupapa o te rā, whiti ngā kōrero whakamutunga, Clarke whakamutunga, wai atu he hākari. You know, and so boom, 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 that was starting to happen. And so I wrote those up really quickly after I did my mihi, because e tika ana kia mihi te katoa. I said, ai, tika. So I quickly wrote those up and I could hear them, because I knew that kind of taking eyes off all of them gave them a space to kind of, you know, and not have fire looking at them like, your turn, you know. And so it was me taking the time, and as I saw them progressing in their mihi, oh, ko so and so ahau, e ono kutau, ko darara, ki hai ai pirangi te haere mai ngari konei, you know, and so they each have their own. So I would say to them, okay, ki te koutou i ngā pene rākau konei, me he mea, kua tūtuki tia, te tahi oe nei kaupapa, nā, haere mai, mahi ato rākau. So each of them got a turn to tick off what we went through. And then from that it was really starting to firm up. When it came to the part in the Rārangi kaupapa, where we talked about kaupapa o te rā, it was about what happened for them that seen them arrive here today. So, ko te kaupapa, hea te take hai mai ana koutou konei? He kōrero wā koutou? You know, just really simple, but wasn't really simple, that was my best. He wā koutou kōrero? Hena puta mai. And so, asking them to talk about why they thought they had to come to meet with us today. And then it was probably the boy again, because his sister, the 10-year-old, was still sussing us out. And so she eventually talked about, tō mātou kore take noiho te chaki pepi. Oh, you can imagine, it was like a knife. And I thought, right, compose yourself, because you know, you're that near perfection. So compose yourself. And so it was through that helped us to identify what kaupapa o te rā needs to be for this mokopuna. Immediately we went into hiki tia, hapai tia, everything, all those tears we could think of, you know, helped the tears to evaporate, because we were really looking at how kia hiki atu te wairua o nei nepa. So can I just say, so as I said earlier, some of us northerners, we got these made up names, and nepa for us is a child. And so konei ngā nepa la, and for us at that point in time, it was about how do we build up their confidence, kia pai ai te rere o ngā kōrero. So we talked about, and they weren't as pretty as they are here today. It was just fire scribbly writing on the whiteboard that they talked to them about aroha. So, I roto i tēnei mea te aroha. Ka pēhea koutou e mōhio ki te pā mai o te aroha. You know, and you're making this up on the hop at the beginning. I'm better now, guys. I'm better now. Just be rest assured, I think. And so it was asking the questions that went to a place that their assurance to me was the way in which their body language, if it was boring, then it was kind of this play action like, you know, kōmiri ana konei. They weren't doing much. If it was something that was like music, and it was, well, tirairaka they called it. If it was like te tangi o te tirairaka, then I was all eyes. I had their attention. And so it really helped to shape the way in which we wanted to better ready ourselves better associate the kupu to their experience, that's going to help them find that same sunshine that I talked about earlier. And so there came the use of takepu, there came the use of principles. And so when you asked one of them about, he hate mahi o manaki? Hey, what's the job? What is the job of manaki? Oh, mahi kai. Mahi kai is the mahi of manaki. Mahi kai, tiaki pepi, tini kore, and all those different things that told me just how involved they were with this baby. Well, each of their responses, it gave me and my colleague a real way of understanding their position, and once again how to better ready myself. And so as we then started to go through this, remember we're still at one session, we get to the place where we talk about ia wiki, so kaupapa o tāku rā, kia mōhio ai rātou, ko tēnei te rā timatatanga. And so, of course, that provoked a question, pēhea te roa, ka haere mai mātou. So, and responses was, e roa ake I tau nei hia. So it was like, so we're here every week. I roto I te reo Māori? Ai, I roto I te reo Māori. O whaia, iti rawa tō mātou kōrero Pākehā, engari. Pai atu te nui. And so you got these little tamariki who have come in and you're told that they withdrawn, non-participatory, and they've got attitude. And just in that, it was probably about a good hour and a half. Now, just couch that. My counselling training tells me 20 minutes maximum. So training as a social worker, training as a counsellor tells me that 20 minutes maximum with tamariki. I wouldn't have even got past Clarke and their waiata, let alone their himene. And I think that, all of those, we're balancing all of those when we're working. You can do it because I tūtaki ai te wairua ki te aloha. I noto I wā mau nei kōrero. And I think that that at the end of that 1.5 hour, we get to the place again. So we've gone through kaupapa o te rā. We went through whiti kōrero, and in whiti kōrero is the place where we have these question and answers. And it's really about examining their thoughts. So for the one who talked about they didn't really want to come but had to come, she had gone for it, didn't want to, and glad I didn't miss out. And I think it was just that space and time in a safe environment where they could use their reo, where they could speak honestly, and that their mother was out there waiting for them. She hadn't gone back to look for centre. She was outside the door and she was waiting for them. So that gave them some sense of security. And the fact that we were taking a little bit longer than what they're accustomed to, it made the social worker want to come in and make sure that things are okay. And so whiti kōrero, they talk about what we had raised in kaupapa o te rā. And the kaupapa, so the whiti kōrero around the matenga o tō rātou pepi was what came up. And so the 10-year-old in her whiti kōrero ka ki atu, hara nā mātou te he ne whaia. E hara. e hara. You know, and that question, you saw the shoulders move back. You saw the little faces are looking near fire, like it all just rested with you to say to them, to affirm to them, e hara nā koutou te he. So in the back of your head, you're thinking, how many people have told you that it was your fault? How many have told you that it was your fault? And so just that one line opener, we left it at that. He kōrero atu I wēnei? No. Kahore, no, kahore, kapai. And so I explained to them, so whiti kōrero, nā tai te wā, kia tukua nātu o mātou whakaritenga o mātou kōrero ki taua atua. Ki taua atua ātawhai, ki taua atua whai aroha mō tātou katoa. So then, explaining to them that there's a God, there's a atua, there's a io, but the important factor, I think, for them is knowing that there was an atua that cared about them, that wasn't looking badly and, disparagingly. And because I could tell by the way, te hea ngā atua, etc. And I'll just leave it there because, I felt for them because it gave me a real sense that before them coming here, they would have had to experience tangihanga, they had to experience whānau, and they shared some of that later down the track in our sessions, how they were stood up and they were shown at whānau tangihanga and huinga and kauemate that it was their fault. Like, who does that to mokopuna? So anyway, so that was further down the track. So you knew what you were, you really knew what you were talking about. And so with that, we take ourselves into the next process, which was ngā krakia whakamutunga. Ngā kōrero whakamutunga, which was pai te haere mai, pai he reo, Rere ke kia hau whaia. I said, nē, ai, rere ke, o rete koe ki te tūhoi. I said, ka pai. And so it was good. And those were the kōrero whakamutunga, rere ke taku reo. And hea te mate o te wha, e te hua, pērā atu. E tika ana ngā kōrero, e rere ke ana. And for tamariki, we're going to give in. We're going to say, ai, e tika ana. And so those were our kōrero whakamutunga. And then we came to Clarke, Clarke whakamutunga, and I asked them if they got a Clarke whakamutunga. And then the little fella gets up and he does those. He did those Clarke. I remember vividly at Awhirenga. Oh my gosh, tēnei yo. Away they go. Beautiful, beautiful. And then we have hakari. So in our preparation for these tamariki, because I'm just saying I'm not too bad at fried bread, and so I got my dough ready. I get my dough ready before the session. And I've got it sitting out there in our kitchen at the whare ruruhau, and bought the frying pan, and my mate had bought some smoothie drinks or something flash, and we're getting ready for our hakari, and we let them know, nei te wā mo te hakari, te kaha langatira o mātou kōrero, e tika ana kia kai hakari. So there we go, fried bread, Oh, and then our minister's there with the krakia too. And we have a kai, kia whakanoa te wāhanga I te taha o ngā nepara. And so it was a lot about those stories, those lived experiences of mokopuna that helped us, and I can't go past all of this mahi without sharing that. And the rest is really easy going through this whare, but I do want to try and wrap this soon, to say that the learning out of that looks like this, is when we have our foundations looking like this, nice and solid, kia pai te takato, kia pai te takato, nice and flat, even Stevens. But we talk about, and I think about those parents of those tamariki, and having spent time with them further down the track. And so what they brought into this relationship or into this whare, it's a twofold. I use it as part of how we reconstruct ourselves, yeah? And so he came in, he lived with his nan and koro, and when he was, I think, 8, she had passed away. And then she came in as a survivor of sexual abuse. And both their parents were alcoholics. She was the caregiver of her siblings, where she even had to stay home from college to look after them, and so on and so on and so forth. So now, ka pēhea te pai o te noho. So how is it going to stay nice and solid? And how's that foundation going to be as solid? I don't think so. It's not happening. And so that's what this young couple brought in with them as a whānau. And so because I worked with them as well in the similar situation. And so what I like to do is I bring forward all of these raru, all of these taumahatanga, and put them up the front. If this table was bigger, I would have put them there. But I bring them in the front there. And the simple reason is so that we don't take the eye off the raru, but we can still rebuild. We can still build ourselves. We can still build ourselves up. Our whare can still have walls, can have a roof, etc., etc. And so that was the purpose. And we're all filled. You know, our kete is so heavy. He's carrying my bag. Poor John over here gave me a hand. He's carrying, poor fella, lifting my kete because it's filled with principle. And so we know, we're mindful of that. And my whare's had a bit of a rough time over the last couple of months. And so we can still continue to build our whare, to put our walls up, our walls that would normally, for kōrero sake, I like to furnish it to look something that resembles our own whare. And here I've just got to review my tuku persons, but we can continue to reconstruct. And so sometimes, you must be a good crowd, because sometimes this takes a little while to slide through, but it's happening today, that man of principle over there. And so I remind the couples that, our whare base, like ourselves, has to be spoken to. That the walls are here to be spoken to. Many of our whare, I can't say up our way in Kaikua, we don't have very many carvings on our, because that whole colonising factor decided it wasn't pretty. But we have the rākau inside our whare. We have many, we have our popo, our beautiful tuku panelling that all tell stories. And in some of our whare, we have lots of the photos that are in there that are, once again, all our storytelling that happens, the pūrākau, they're there for us to kōrero with. Sometimes we might get frightened if they're going to talk back, but we think about it, And so here, and I say to that mum and dad, I said to them, this is like you fellas, we need to get ourselves around to addressing all of those raru, Because when you're like this and you're walking through an open-ended building, which is the relationship, you're going to be like this. You're going to be awanga-wanga about what you want to do, what's happening in your relationship. It's all good. It's all good for us, but the awanga-wanga is also to do with those families that these two parents come from. She wasn't good enough for him. He wasn't good enough for her. There's all of these going on, eh? That cause an unsettling beginning of anybody's relationship. I'm sure we can all relate to that. You know, we had our own wanga times. And so, what do? I like to use my whare and talk about the space here. You can see that I mostly use it for teaching rather than anything else lately. But the entrance of the kuaha. I'm down and dandy and happy for those who want to speak for the whakairo and want to speak for all the rata, and I think that that's an important part too. But the way in which I use this at the moment is to talk about front entrance. We want people coming in to meet our daughters and our sons. We want them coming in the front door. None of this round up back 9 months later, all right? So we say through the front door. That's the best. We want those kind of statements of excellence for our tamariki and for the whānau that we're working with. Because we know that down here, where this atamira is, we're down here where the atamira is what happens in people's whare. Atamira, for us in up in the Tai Tokerau, this is where our tūpāpaku lies. Yeah, for my relations on the coast, it's out here. Makerere, yes. But, you know, but, mahana, they tell me, I ngā whakaro. And so, our atamira, a lot of the photos go here. Actually, more, I'd say probably in the last maybe 15, maybe 20 years, they're all over, I was going to say all over the place. They're everywhere in the whare. But initially they were all up here. Because, why? Why do you think they were all up here?
Because the veil's on the other side, but from there, they then join everyone else on the...
Deadly. You need to be doing this. Deadly. Tika. I think when we look inside the whare, and I learned some of this from Pa, because we used to Joe Waru over there, we used to kind of sit around his waiwai and listen to his stories. So we talk about the three parts of the whare. So up here we have for the manuhiri. Over here we have this part called the whare o rongo, which is where you're supposed to be at peace or arriving at that peaceful place. And over here te wahanga mo te tūpāpaku. So all got very important roles, I'm sure. And I think I think that when we come into these whare like relationships, know the boundaries. Manuhiris is your in-laws, you know, easy as manuhiri is your in-laws when you're coming in. And then in the middle here still needs to be some place where you can whakaiti. Learn the art of whakaiti into here. Because, oh boy, the rewards are great. You know, and like our tūpāpaku, the rewards are great. Because we talk about their greatness before they leave us, all the wonderful and not so wonderful things that they did while they were here with us, but he tapua no tera. And so our whare starts to look like that. You know, are starting to look, oh, che, we get it. And all of those are based on these principles, because we grew up with those principles all our lives. And I'm near end, sorry. And so in here of our roof, it looks like this. And so the roof really is the is where we can talk to to whānau and to husbands, wives, tamariki, about what closure looks like and why closure, yeah? And in these two here we have our rata, we have our tahu and we have our rata, and every one of these have a pūrākau. They have a pūrākau about that tūpuna who set up the big house next door and told people they got to take their shoes off before they go. And then you got this one who could make the meanest boil up. Everybody's got a story. You know, we have precious places for our tūpuna kōrero. But when I'm doing this mahi with tamariki or with whānau, I try and, incorporate and kia whai ngako ngā kōrero, kia rata e ngā kōrero ki ngā āhuatanga, ki ngā hikoitanga. Hey, so we can do that. We're allowed to do that. If we can back it up and like you listen to that Hera, Rere, whitianga te rā. Ei, he kōrero anō tērā. But I ki ai te kete, kia puāwai ngā toinga, kia puāwai ngā taonga, ngā toinga. My father used to use toinga, which is really not, when I think about it, was just leftovers, but I don't want to be a leftover because I'm near perfection. And so I think it's important that we relate some of our kōrero pūrākau, so that families see themselves in it, rather than this simply being a session that's going to help them in that way. And so each of our roof goes on. We're hoping that we're hoping for blessings, that there's going to be happy outcomes. It doesn't always. But can you see, the house is built, it's being constructed. It can be deconstructed as well. And we're not encouraging it, but we're saying that he tikanga anō tērā. Hakareri o mātou, whakareri. And so our whare comes together, the tāhuhus, talk about how your stories of their stories of their tūpuna, using our rākau, talking about all of these things that had happened here that prevented their whare from standing up firmly, are being spoken about inside each of these different paupau or tuku panels. There's nearly not any tension that we know of that we've not been able to overcome. Yeah, and so we can speak to those. Those who went outside of marriage, oh, shame on us not, and so family, so addiction, we can work through that. Whānau violence, that's why we're here. We're here. Our hands are up saying, yeah, rere koho, let's go. We can work through this. All right, so the idea is to engage in the kōrero, and the reason I brought this up, and so through the garata, we're able to, that's our connection. Through our tāhuhu becomes our connection to atua, and there goes rere koho, okay. And so with this, all that remains is these. And I tell you what, I was working for years with men's groups, and I never used to have one of these. And one of the fellas in the group, he came up with this idea, and they made these for me. I got a whole bunch of them, with different iwi. But they seem to have gone for walks. Some of these are at presentations. I'll leave it go for a kai. Hello, it's got grown legs. But one of the men in our men's program, when I was using this, he ended up carving quite a few of them, and then we ended up having workshops, and the men started making their own whare, so that it could be theirs. They can take home. They saw themselves as being, unlike me, near perfect. They became perfect, they reckon. And so with that, this whare has had lots of really beautiful blessings upon it. And then another one that comes at that is this fire. She was really very taken by it, and she made the whare a kākahu, kia kore e makariri. And so she done this up like that. And the hoa haere of this whare is this kete that was given to me by Oranga Ngākau years ago. And it wasn't until I took it out earlier, and I said, Heka, that's the one I got from you. And it went to from Leone, and I took it to Iceland. I took the whare and everything to Iceland, and they gave me this to pin on to the kete for them. Nō reira, e tātou mā, just a couple of announcements. I sometimes have rented the whare out, comes with mattresses and pillows. Right? Mattresses and pillows. But as you can see, some people don't return the pillows. But my kids and I have fun just sewing these together. And over here is supposed to resemble something that looks like a taumata. But it's, you think it, you read your audience, you know what the whānau that you're working with would work well with. And you test it, not in any ungrateful way, but always kia whakaiti wā koutou nei kōrero. That's kind of, that's sort of my closing kōrero. I just had one thing, like somebody else, I think it was you, Shirley, you had this wild-eyed, you had this whakaaro came to you and you read that out and it was beautiful. And mine wasn't that beautiful, but I'm going to say it anyway. And it was kind of like this, with all sincerity and love and aroha. Please don't be that Māori that throws the brother or the sister under the bus. Go talk to the driver. Go talk to the driver and let them know that they're driving down a one-way street or heading down the wrong street. We too have to own our own hard conversations with each other. That's really the moral of that story, is that let's have those hard conversations with each other. We're not always going to be, palsy-walsy and get on really well with each other. But let's not ware tia ki taua mea te aroha, whakaiti. Nō reira, e tātou mā, aroha nui, tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko te hoka e nei taku tapua, ko te hoka e nuki, ko te hoka e roa, ko te hoka e a tipuna a tāne nui a rangi. I te kiti a rangai ki te rangi tūhaha, ki te riki o manono, ki roto nāzuna, ko i o matua kore anake. He te pimti mo te kite no te wānanga ko te kete humuru kete Āturi tiri a ka pau a kia papatua nuku. Tātua te ea rangata ki te whaia, ki te ao marama.
Ai. Kia ora, can I...
E tūake nei ki te mihi ati ki taku whanauna no te kāinga i te mea kua wehe taku hoa ko Joe Waru, kari mea mai ia kia hau, ka tū ki te ako, ki aia. No reira, ka tū au. Nā hoa, e hara te pātai mōu, ngari, e korero noi ho tēnei. Me he mea near perfection koe. Tino bordering on brilliant o kōrero e. Bordering on brilliant. E hera, ki te au i o mahi, mai te tīmatanga tai ati ki tēnei rā, ka tika o kōrero. Tino rau e taku ngā kau ki te whakarongo ki o kupu, no te kāinga hoki. No reira, tuki te mihi ati kā koe te tuani. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koe.